Hello everyone, my name is Akal and I am a somatic therapist and counselor. If you'd like to find out a little bit about the work I do, you can check out my website, which I have posted down below this video. So today, there's a light glare on the Venus word there. Today we are covering Venus. I guess I'm covering Venus. So this is the first of the videos I'm doing on the planets. I chose Venus partially because it was a toss-up between Venus and Mars. The reason I chose Venus has to do with, I wanted to kind of start with those astrological planets that tend to reflect the material plane the most in terms of our experience on the material plane. So, like I said, it was a toss-up between Mars and Venus. Venus, and the way I'm going to kind of look at this is really about spiritual evolution as I perceive it. So I'm not going to go into like the characteristics in terms of like, you know, Venus can lead to this career, that career, whatever those sorts of characteristics are. Instead, I'm going to focus on the fundamental energies and how we can experience those fundamental energies in our own life. So Venus, I'm going to cover through the gunas as well. I did a series of videos on the nakshatras through the gunas before, so this time I'm doing the planets and I'm also once again utilizing the gunas. So Venus, which is Rajasic and Tamasic. It's what that means is so Rajasic is positive mind. So it's proactive, it's engaging, it's attaching, it's always moving towards things. So you can say it's of all the fundamental energies in creation, it is the movement principle. It is the action principle. So when I say positive, I'm not meaning it in the sense of like kind of like new agey positive. I don't mean that. What I mean is movement and action. So this movement and action is moving toward tamasic outcomes. So tamasic outcomes are those outcomes which essentially lead to manifestation, lead to something becoming more solid and concrete. So, other words, Venus is not a planet about spiritualization. So Jupiter is about spiritualization. Saturn is about spiritualization. And in some ways, all the planets are about this process of spiritualization. But Venus specifically it's kind of an interesting planet because we'll go ahead and with some of the characteristics here. So artistic, music, poetry, the urge to merge, and I'll get into that in a moment. Sex, we're looking at, you know, talents, it's social, it's and it can be a seer and intuitive. So with Venus, you have a high road and a low road. Now, reason why there's a high road and a low road with Venus is because if we look at the symbol, which is a circle with a cross below it. So that circle basically represents, I guess every human being is essentially on this planet to become whole again, is to move towards union with the divine. That union with the divine has to occur through an internal process. And what I mean by that is that we're essentially working to unify the polarities that exist within us. And oftentimes, those things that we're doing out into the world, which is Venus, which is Mars, those things which are being expressed out into the world, oftentimes can lead to, I guess, a more simplistic or difficult path towards that spiritualization process, towards that merger point. So again, the circle is what we're moving towards, which is that wholeness, that divine wholeness. Now the departure, the cross is below the circle. And this is really interesting because you think about the cross below the circle, what are we talking about? There's another term for Venus, which is Lucifer. Lucifer, the devil, whatever it may be. And again, this is a benefic planet. This is a positive planet in general. Again, when I'm saying devil and Lucifer, I remove the religious or spiritual judgments you have around that term. Lucifer, the devil in this particular case, is really kind of more referencing how humanity has fallen into material fixation, sensate pleasures. So, of which Venus very much governs these sensate pleasures. Again, it governs music, it governs sex, it governs all these kinds of qualities. So that cross below the circle represents, I think I keep seeing the churning of the oceans. That's what I keep reading. But what it is if you can look at the horizontal line as being, quote unquote, the divine feminine, and again, remove your notions of which you mean, I do not mean gender female, gender male, simply divine feminine, and the vertical line is the divine masculine. So in that point at which they converge at the center of that cross would be the sort of unity point. And that's where we experience universal love. And again, this universal love is sometimes, and this is where Venus is kind of a spiritual planet, is that we end up acting out those things on the material plane, which are ultimately a mimicry or a reflection of the bigger picture of, the overall, the overall path of creation. And so what I mean by that is that individual love can then become, or relationship love can then sort of give us a feeling. It can, help us perceive more internal light, to have this warm joy, this feeling of goodness, which, if we can access that space within ourselves individually, we can move towards, in a more comfortable manner, towards that union with the divine. So that's kind of what Venus is all about. But again, there's a higher expression and a lower expression of Venus. The higher expression of Venus, again, this idea that we've fallen to earth, we've fallen into density. So the low road for Venus is the movement into hedonism. The high road for Venus is the movement towards intuition and becoming the seer. Now, that's interesting. Intuition is something that I'm going to kind of focus on with Venus, because to me it's probably the most relevant thing. Everyone, kind of in some ways can reflect on their life and say, they can see where they're artistic, they can see where we're creative. And again, Venus is all about this sort of generating, preserving, and nourishing quality on this planet. Yogi Bhajan states it as, where is it at? Extraordinary sensitivity to sensations, emotions, and impressions from nature and others, and other people, It creates, elaborates, and expresses each sensation. So Yogi Bhajan calls it the artist. It's what he refers to as aspect 4 in his book, The Mind. So aspect 4, or the artist, again, is this creative, generating, an expressive force, but is rising out of sensations and of feelings. So sensations and feelings, of which, like I said, are the predominant qualities of Venus, those sensations and feelings, again, we can rise out of those feelings and sensations, we can rise into more, essentially into the bottomless pit of pleasure seeking, or we can start to cultivate ourselves, which is, I'm going to give you guys an exercise in the latter part of this video, which can help strengthen the Venus aspect or the Venus quality in your life. But the high road for here is the movement towards intuition and the seer. Now, intuition is very, 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 very connected to feeling. Intuition is the reptilian brain. It is glandular. It is all about that innate knowing, that a knowing that happens, that you can't logically apply a progression to this energy. Intuition is absolutely amazing if you understand what it truly means. So this feeling and sensation and this self-sensuality, for all intents and purposes, it essentially, if you become very harmonized with that and you learn to not become, stuck to it or too attached, again, Rajasic, too attached to those pleasurable sensate things, then what ends up happening is that intuition can transcend time and space. You are now a time traveler if you can pay attention to that intuition if you can harmonize with those sensations. So the sensations are a number of things. Sometimes the sensation is like a gut instinct. Sometimes it's just this pull, this sensation, like you're pulled towards somebody and you're pulled towards them for some particular reason. Now, the slippery slope with inductive reasoning or like intuition is that it really depends on, I guess, the outcomes you can't read into. You simply follow. Intuition, you simply follow. The moment you assume an outcome with intuition, you sort of, you miss the point. Again, there's no logic here. This is not about logic and reason. This is simply about honoring intuition and instinct, and to once again acknowledge the fact that time and space, which are both man-made principles, that's a whole other video, but both of those are essentially man-made concepts. And so your intuition can transcend those things. It can tell you what is correct for your energy, who is correct for your energy. And if you honor that authenticity that is attached to your intuition, you will move on a more authentic path. You will move towards those. And again, the whole point of life from point A to point B is essentially a spiritualization process. And again, the more you honor your intuition and your instincts, the more you're going to move along that process in I won't say smooth, but perhaps a more smooth manner. In other words, you're taking the high road. And so the high road of Venus doesn't necessarily exclude sex. This is not a position of becoming an ascetic. If you're utilizing Venus, you're paying attention to your intuition, your instincts, it simply means you have to make choices around how to express your energy. And you could make choices to express your energy through sex, etc. So this, how do I explain this? Tantra. And I mean Tantra in a kind of a broader sense. I don't necessarily simply mean Tantra in the sort of Western, I call it California Tantra, in that sort of sexualized kind of way. What I mean is that within Tantra, there's this idea that you don't exclude anything, and that everything that is on the material plane is for our use. But once again, you have to operate through intuition and through discernment in order to determine whether or not, let's say, alcohol, let's say drug use, let's say sex. All these things are those sensate pleasures that we can take the low road and get stuck in. Again, this idea of we're materializing with the energy of Venus. We're moving towards concrete, towards density. And again, that path does not necessarily move in opposition to spirituality, not necessarily. So you can use drugs, alcohol, sex, etc. in order to understand Tantra, understand Venus through a tantric approach. And what that means is that you don't lose your center. You approach sex, drugs, alcohol, meat, wine, whatever. You will approach these things in a way which shows respect. So you respect as a fly. Sorry, I just jerked my head around just so you know what's going on. It's a fly that keeps landing on my head. So yeah, you essentially, like I said, you approach those. So you approach that idea of unity utilizing these chemicals, but you must stay centered. You can't become identified with the sensations, with the feelings. You have to allow these energies to move within you. Because we'll use marijuana as an example. Marijuana, if you use it correctly, I won't say correctly, that's probably a judgmental term, but let's say you use it one way, which is you use it with respect. And if you use it with respect and you use it as a way of not distracting yourself, you can stay very, very present. And marijuana will trigger openings within your nervous system, within your energy body. And those openings will force certain content to the surface, for better or worse. So those of you who have eaten weed in excess know that it will force things to the surface you don't necessarily want to experience. So there is the slippery slope, and there is the need to, treat the power and the potency of these compounds, of these chemicals, as well as sex, which can do very similar kind of work within your nervous system. Use these things in an honorable way. So with all that said, I believe this is all I want to cover on Venus. So again, just keeping in mind that this is all about this sort of movement on the material plane. This is not necessarily about transcending the material plane. This is about your tools you have to utilize on the material plane, which can lead towards a spiritualization process. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I connected Venus to aspect 4, or the artist, in Yogi Bhajan's book, The Mind. All right, so here's Yogi Bhajan's book, The Mind. And in the back of this book, we have a flow chart. So Venus is considered the artist. Now, why is it the artist? Because it has a positive mind, which is what's functioning on a more sort of conscious, aware level. Again, it's moving towards attaching to things, it's moving towards merger, it's moving towards sensuality, towards creative things. Again, Venus is very positive. And then on this deeper level, though, the artist is, and again, on the impersonal mind level, on a deep, deep level, again, it's here functioning on what they call tamasic, or manas, which is the mind. It is functioning through an inertia, heavy, it says heavy, slow, fixed, concealed, habitual, etc. Impure. But the way you can look at this is when they talk about impure, they're simply talking about the materialization process on a deep level. So it is activity moving through on the material plane. So aspect 4, the artist, positive mind times tamasic, or manas, which basically means mind. So again, Venus, we're talking about mind as sort of like egoic mind. So here's a little blah, blah, blah. And here is the exercise itself, done for 31 minutes, they say. When it says 31 minutes, think about 3 to 11 minutes to start, and then you want to build to 31. So in the next segment, I'll go ahead and show you how to do this exercise. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do aspect 4, the exercise, or the meditation for aspect 4, or the artist. And again, this corresponds with Venus. I thought this exercise was really interesting because, one, it's done silent, or in other words, the mantra is mental. Now, the reason why that's interesting is, again, keeping in mind that Venus as a dominant energy it's about activity and about material or density. So it's activity and density. So it's about sensations and feeling. And so I guess the best way to kind of describe that is that in order to allow intuition or your instincts to show clearly, in order for us to honor those things, it often requires a very still, quiet mind. And I guess we need a still, quiet mind for all sorts of things. But in this particular case, so this mantra is done in what they call the most sattvic style of doing mantra, which is mentally. So mentally reciting it. And as that internal voice becomes more and more quiet, less and less perceptible, it becomes more and more subtle and more sattvic. And again, sattvic is about clarity. So it's clarity, it's balance, it's harmony. Those are the words. So this exercise is done. One of the things I suggest, it doesn't state specifically what to do with the eyes, other than to look down at your hands. But I suggest kind of squinting the eyes. So you can 1/10 open or 9/10 shut, however you want to look at it. The hands, or the mudra, are only the ring fingers. Only the ring fingers are touching, and they're just touching gently at their sides. The pinkies are overlapped with the right pinky above the left, but they're not touching. They're simply overlapped. So that's what it looks like. And you're going to hold it at the level of the heart with the palms up. Once again, your eyes in a squint, angled down. And so this exercise is actually really interesting because what you're doing is, it says in the book, you're pulsing each one of the fingers. So it's going to be thumb, index finger, thumb, middle finger, thumb, ring finger, thumb, pinky. It says pulsing. Now, it took me a while to figure out what he meant. So I guess you could literally move those fingers, so like literally pulsing them. What I like to do, though, is to put my awareness at the tips. So I'm putting my awareness, my sense of feeling, on the fingers, on each one of the fingers. So with the first, and again, the mantra here is Sa, S-A-T-A, Ta, Na, Ma. So Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. So Sa is going to be thumb, index finger, thumb, that's a hard one to do. Anyway, thumb, I don't want to flick you off. Anyway, thumb, middle finger, that's going to be Ta. Then thumb, ring finger is N-A, Na, Na, and thumb, pinky is Ma. So Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. And what you want to do, once again, is you want to feel these fingers. So while mentally saying Sa, I have my sense of feeling on my thumb and my index finger. Ta, sense of feeling on my thumb and middle finger. And then same with the ring finger and the pinky. So Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. And so you want to do this for, it says 31 minutes. I suggest starting with 3 to 11 minutes. Again, this is very subtle meditation, and this is going to bring your mind into a very clear state, particularly if you do this practice over the long term. So again, if you want to strengthen intuition in your life, if you want to strengthen your ability to move along the earth plane in an authentic manner, if you want to have a greater experience of those sensate pleasures of sex and sexuality and those sorts of things, you move towards subtlety. That's what Venus is attempting to do in our lifetime. It's to make us more sensitive, more subtle, so that we can be guided by our intuitive sense. So with all that said, I appreciate you watching this video. And again, let me go ahead and show you real quick. So pinkies overlapped, right over left. The ring fingers touching, held at the level of the heart, eyes focus down at the hands in a squint. Satanama. So one important detail I neglected to mention is while you're doing this meditation, you want to do it very slow. So Yogi Bhajan makes the comment in here less than 4 times per minute. So you're doing this very slow and you're tuning into very precisely the sensations you feel on your fingers. And again, one other thing is that this is actually a great way to clear the various meridian lines in the body. Energy flows to where attention goes. So all the fingertips correspond with a lot of different meridian lines. So this is one way you can kind of clarify those lines. So once again, I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you much.